The French and the Haitian Revolution. The French Revolution. The French Revolution began in 1789 but was led by Charles Alexandre de Calonne, a controller general of finances. As a result of King Louis XVI's excessive amount of spending and stealing from the people, and France's costly involvement in the American Revolution, the French went into bankruptcy. The French Revolution had a pre-revolution called the Aristocratic Revolt. This revolt was the result of the disagreement that the Assembly had against the proposal that de Calonne had proposed, a financial reform that wanted everyone to pay land taxes, from which the upper class could no longer exempt from. The French's voting was by status, but the Third Estate wanted voting by head. The upper-class noblemen disliked the idea of having a voting by head because they enjoyed the privileges that came along with the traditional system. On August 4, 1789, the National Assembly adopted a declaration by the name of the rights of man and of the citizens. The document was a commitment to replace the ancient system with a new balanced government with freedom of speech, equal representation, and a well-representative government itself. The French passed by a 10-month massacre called the Reign of Terror, in which any person suspected as an enemy of the revolution was beheaded and killed. This terror was led and managed by Robespierre.
The Haitian Revolution. Unlike the French Revolution, the Haitian Revolution began in the early 1790s, led by Toussaint Louverture, a former slave. The Haitian Revolution was the most successful slave revolt in the history, which later led to the establishment of Haiti by Louverture himself and his followers. One of Louverture's main goals was intended to abolish slavery. Louverture bought 4 million slaves. There was no pre-revolution like the French, but the French Revolution itself played an important role and probably even led to the Haitian Revolution. Saint-Domingue was not in bankruptcy like the French were, nor were they rich. It was more of a middle-class type government. The population of Saint-Domingue was composed of 3 different groups: the whites, which held most of the power, the free blacks, who held intermediate position, and the mixed bloods, which was the lower class.
Even though these revolutions happened at 2 different times and 2 different locations, people from both France and Saint-Domingue, now known as Haiti, strived for the same thing and even had some similarities. The French and the Haitians all wanted one thing and one thing only: equal representation in the government and as part of their community. Both the French and the Haitian were ran by the middle-class people. The French middle-class people were called the Third Estate, which was composed of the nobility and the clergy. The Haitian middle-class people were called the Creoles.
Another similarity that they both shared was that the lower class had been slaves from Saint-Domingue or peasants from France revolt against their leaders. For example, the slaves from Saint-Domingue rebelled against their owners, destroying everything they had worked for, and the peasants from France rebelled against the tax collectors, which made the French mad because they were being unfair landlords in the elite. Last but not least, both the French and the Haitian Revolution were ended by new leaders that came at the end and were able to establish and independentize their country. Napoleon Bonaparte was appointed as a new leader of the French army and changed the ways that the government was being ran, and marked the end of the French Revolution. In Haiti, an army general as well, Jean-Jacques Dessalines, helped proclaim the independence of a new country on January 1804, known as Haiti today.